Halo 3, we're doing a comparison of the Xbox Series X version on the left and the Xbox 360 version on the right. That's right, I dug out the original 360 hardware in order to do a comparison between the two so you can see the changes in the visuals, the technology, and generally just the game itself over the years. So on the left, within Halo the Master Chief Collection, Halo 3 now runs at a native 4K resolution at 120 FPS with HDR support. So it looks clean, crisp, and generally quite gorgeous. On the right, we're getting 720p at 30 FPS with no HDR support, and again, it is the original console. The game is available through backwards compatibility on Series X as a standalone, where it does have an improved resolution, but it does not have any of the other benefits that the Chief Collection has provided for this particular title. So it's kind of just exciting to be doing these, back and forths. It is a ton of work, so be sure to like the video. It's just a lot of effort to get these together. Subscribing is great too, but generally I hope you're enjoying this option to see the differences between the two titles, and I tried to line them up the best I could. Now, my saves for Halo 3 were gone for whatever reason, the cloud or something like that. So I did want to show off different levels, but I decided on just showing off the first level here, kind of doing a run-through comparison, so that you can see combat, some cutscenes, a variety of different moments throughout this particular scenario, just so that you are, kind of seeing a variety of what Halo 3 has to offer, especially with this first part. But there were a couple areas where I was like, oh, this would be really cool. Now with that, later on you will see some multiplayer maps. I think there's an even larger gap in between the two, and I hope that the change between the both versions is very clear. A lot of it comes down to the removal of jagged and or wavy lines around the edges of objects and items and things in the environment, such as the characters. You also see an increased vibrancy of light and color within the world too. The brutes and the jackal shields really pop. The plasma pistol, even the little lights on the assault rifle come alive a lot more on the left in comparison to the right. It's crazy. On top of that, the texturing in the environment looks fantastic on the left. It's very clear. It's definitely a lot more detailed, and you see it from more of a further distance in regards to, just kind of keeping everything clean, and that is fantastic. It's just really great to be doing a comparison of this game because this is my favorite title, my favorite game of all time. I love Halo 3, and it's always great to do a bit of a revisit to show it off and talk about it because it is a game I thoroughly enjoy playing and I know quite well. It's crazy to see such a gap in the technology and the upgrades for this title. I wish more from this era were given a similar treatment, just because it's so nice to see it here that I can just imagine so many other games would benefit from having a similar upgrade. I think that would be great, but you gotta wait and see how they do things over time with remasters and remakes, right? Now with that, I do imagine someday they'll do some sort of anniversary version for Halo 3, redo some of the texturing. I think really though, the game looks gorgeous still. It really does, from the the character models to the environment. It does hold up quite well. Now, the cutscenes, obviously, they could throw some blur ones on there or upgrade those. Those would look a lot better. But I think the core gameplay itself still is quite gorgeous and very distinct in terms of its art style and aesthetic. It's very much something that aimed to be a little bit more of a mature, realistic look, but it never left behind that original Halo look and art style that made the series so distinct and so iconic when it was releasing back in the day. And I think that's an important thing to think about when you think about the overall Halo franchise, is just kind of how each entry does something a little bit unique in the art style, and it's kind of, whether you keep to that old look or you try to stray away from it. How do you go too far? Do you, not go far enough? It's an interesting discussion that we do every single time they release a new Halo game. And this should be a big moment coming up here, not at this particular point, but once we get to the cutscene, you'll see quite a colossal difference between the two. But I think I've actually lined this up pretty well, considering, two considerably different plays with different frame rates, which makes a lot of a difference. On the left, you'll notice I'm killing a lot more of the enemies, clearing them out a lot more, because, the controls are just a lot better. it feels a lot smoother, and it's just easier to kind of, you know, shoot things, line things up, and do everything at the same time. Whereas on the right, you know, you're just kind of like moving through it, hoping you don't kind of die and stuff, because it's just a lot harder to play that older version of the game. It just doesn't feel as responsive or as great. So this moment right here that's coming up should be like one of the biggest changes to me between the two. Just all of the objects looking completely smooth out in the distance, the character models a lot smoother. Just it's so much sharper, and you don't have the wavy lines that you're seeing on the right along a lot of the objects and the structures of the environment. And I think that's fantastic, just that big gap. Now, I gotta say, for 360, this amount of like distance, this amount of characters, it's kind of impressive that that console could do it. But at the same time, looking at it now, it's like this is just such a huge upgrade, and we're just doing a stopped side-by-side for context in that point. So now we're moving on to the multiplayer component of the experience. I picked a couple of maps that I thought would look really great in a comparison, and I tried to line them up the best I could for movement throughout them, showing different weapons, different vehicles, you know, just so that you see the different selections in action and get an idea of how they look. Now, for me, this mode is, well, really with all the Halo games I've compared thus far, you notice a lot of the details coming alive. Like, the 360 version just looks so jagged around, like, all of the edges of every little part of the environment. Like, you know, the wall, the rocks, the cliff, the satellite dishes in the back, the objects, the items that you're moving through. And you'll also notice on the left, a big change up, I know, is the fact that we now have, like, weapon skins and stuff. So that is also a difference, I guess you could say, is, you know, we different colors for things. But, you know, that iconic look is still kind of, you know, essential to me, I guess. I actually consider it somewhat heresy to be switching the weapon skins, but I've embraced it. I like it. There is a toggle that you can turn them off, but I enjoy the option. You know, I don't mind it at all. I think it's kind of cool. And I think it's just generally well done how they've integrated that in here. So this is Last Resort. Great map for the showcase because it's quite lovely. You know, it's got like a tropical type vibe to it, beaches, and you just see the more detail in like the sand and the trees and the rocks, the environment. It seems to pop a lot more to me, you know, and it's just a lot more defined is a big part of that. You see a lot more definition on the left when it comes to all of the little rocks and stuff like that. And if you can't see the difference, you're crazy, because it's significant. It really is quite a change between the two. I'm genuinely impressed by what they were able to achieve with this, you know, sort of upgrading these improvements over time. It's kind of crazy. And then, you know, you get the benefit of HDR, and on top of all of this, it's just such an absolute treat, and it makes the game look simply gorgeous. You know, it really comes alive just like I remember it, but even being better, because that's a hard thing to achieve when you are revisiting something nostalgia-wise. So this is going to be a driving segment. We're just going to go through Valhalla. This one, you'll notice more of like the grass detail and some of the plant stuff in this one, and also the rock detail, like around the edges of the map. And then we'll also do a little bit of a flight. So I guess another thing to mention, if you're not really noticing it, is the fluidity of how smooth the left is when I'm moving around or changing direction. There's a lot more, well, 120 FPS, but you know what I mean. It looks a lot more of a clean, clear, realistic picture. And you can see this, I don't know what you would call this monument here, but it's so jagged and wavy, and then on the left it's just clean. Kind of nuts. Here we go with the pit. I thought this one would be really good because of the strong use of a vibrant color, which is the yellow, all around the map. And then also a lot of the details in the stonework up above, which looks really kind of rough on the right. And then also the fencing in the far back too. It's just a lot cleaner, a lot smoother the whole way through, which is fantastic. I mean, when you're playing multiplayer, I can't believe we used to do like 30 FPS in Halo 3, because it just feels insanely better now. Like, really, to get those shots lined up, it's kind of just wild, really. It's amazing. And here are the jagged lines around the edges of the, you know, little yellow spots there. It's a big difference. And now we're finishing off with Rat's Nest, which is just going to be a drive on the Mongoose. A little bit of a fun conclusion, but I do hope you enjoyed this comparison of Halo 3. It is a lot of work to put these together, and it's, you know, also kind of fun in this case because I'm such a fan of Halo 3. So for me, this was a special revisit. I definitely enjoyed setting this up and getting it going, and just seeing the big difference. And hopefully that has come across to you as well when you're watching this, and seeing just the changes the years have brought for MCC, really.